It's nice to see a number of you again who were in the workshop session yesterday. So I'll try not to expound too much on what we already talked about in that session, but still give those who haven't been there the pertinent information. And what I'd really like to do is show you some examples, primarily here in the presentation, because just scrolling through everything would be a bit too time-consuming, especially now that we are a little bit pressed for time. But the topic of my presentation today is ePortfolios, gathering, hunting, and reflecting online, because that's what an ePortfolio is for me most of the time. That you do not create everything just in one system or on one site, but you do bits and pieces over here. You use a learning management system, you use Moodle, you use something else, then you work on Facebook, you have an external blog, you may upload videos to YouTube, you may use SlideShare already as a student for your class presentations. So you have a lot of different places where you work online, so that an ePortfolio oftentimes just becomes an aggregator. But what actually is an ePortfolio? ePortfolios are many, many different things. And as you can already see here, these different things are not compartmentalized entirely, but they flow into each other. So for example, if I have a showcase portfolio where I really only show off my best work, which I want to show to a future employer, to my internship trainer, or for having seen here at the university, then I sometimes do still want to have a reflection in there. I still want to say why I did something in a certain way, but I can also just focus on that in my portfolio work. Or I can show the progress that I went through from the beginning of the semester to the end of term. So my journey through using Facebook, my journey through using a learning management system, or through the entire study program, just reflecting, and there's reflecting again, on my progress of where I've started, what I went through, and where I am now at the end. And then there's also another possibility for an ePortfolio, the assessment part, which Jen just told us quite a bit about. She uses a rubric system that is oftentimes used for assessment of portfolios, which makes it quite transparent for learners to actually see what they are assessed on. So it's not just one final mark at the end, but they get the entire sheet, and they get really constructive feedback, and not just one mark, but more information about it. And that's what you can do all in ePortfolios. There are many other things that you can also do, but these are the four main components for me that I find quite a bit now when talking to teachers and looking into the forums and seeing how other people use Mahara, for example. But it's not just one portfolio that you can use at a time. You can use all types together, or you could start out with one type of portfolio and move to a different type. So for example, if very young students in primary school start out with a portfolio, it will probably really be just a showcase portfolio where they have a picture or where they created a video, really show their best thing. Whereas when they grow older, it might turn into a reflective portfolio, add some words to the picture, why you've done it. Think about what you would like to do differently at another point. And then moving along, it might become a developmental portfolio where they look at what they've done in primary school, look at what they've done in intermediate and then in high school, and again reflect on all these things and look back and see and look at their actual journey. And then maybe at some point also an assessment aspect comes into it. What we often do in portfolios, which is different from regular assessments, is that we really try to make the connections to prior learning and prior experiences and trying to bring those in. Because none of the learners that we encounter are just blank sheets of paper. They all have their experiences. They all went to school. They might have worked in the workforce. They might have already done internships. So we all need to take that into consideration. And here's just one example, a student in an American high school creating a portfolio page on the American dream. And of course, during class time, he reads about the American dream and reads stories, looks at videos, at poems. But of course, he also has his own idea of what the American dream is for him, because the American dream is just so ingrained in the United States that everybody kind of knows that term. So why not bring all that information in there as well? Another student project, but you unfortunately can't see due to the projector there, looks at also again poetry, at literacy things in English class, and deals with the students there. They interpret things, but then again, they of course also bring in their ideas that they had prior to coming into that class. What we also try to do with electronic portfolios or portfolio work in general is to enhance the relevance of new learning, so that we don't just give them a topic, but also show why they should learn it, have it really also authentic. And the electronic portfolio helps them because they are not limited to one type of delivery or one type of input, but they can use what they are comfortable with. So some students use text, they use a combination of images and also video. And in an electronic portfolio, you can bring all these things together. You're not just limited to having a sheet of paper and assessing that portfolio, but you can be multimedia. The students can really express themselves in the way they really want to have it. And of course, we also try to encourage reflective thought and action. And in this example from a teacher here in New Zealand, she has created a portfolio page where she just lists the blogs, the journals from other people that she follows. But what she also does, she gives a brief reflection on it and says why she reads it, so that somebody else who looks at her portfolio, not for assessment purposes, this is just a portfolio for her to keep all her resources in one place, but for somebody else who looks at it, knows why she is reading it. But I suspect also in the beginning she did it for herself, to have a kind of justification and know, okay, I really need that blog and look at it. But like with many other things, we've heard even working with Facebook can be quite difficult for students, for example, if they haven't used it before. Scaffolding is very important in my opinion, because we can't expect our students or learners of any age to know exactly what we want them to know or how they're supposed to use it. Therefore, we need to guide them. We need to give them some templates, some ideas of how to use the technology, what they can do with it, and especially in the case of portfolios, how do we actually work with a portfolio? Because it is so different from what they've known in their prior learning. And so what you can do in an electronic portfolio system, you can easily create a page for a student, create a template, and then give that template to the student. They can make a copy of it and then fill in the bits and pieces, fill in the blank lines. Or they can fill in a table for themselves, so they don't have to start from scratch altogether, but they can get some assistance, and especially when they start out with that is very important in my opinion. And then of course with time that could ease. So they can be more self-sufficient and can create their own pages that they want and don't necessarily have to rely on something that was already made. And very important, and I think we've seen that in Jan's presentation, is that you create a supportive learning environment, that it's a friendly atmosphere, that students are not afraid of using technology, not afraid of giving their opinions, not afraid of actually asking questions. And I'd just like to show you a short video that was created by Fiona Burns, and she uses my portfolio with her Year 13 students, and they just give you a very brief insight on how they use the portfolio system and also what they think about it. So if you see or heard in this video, it's not always easy to work with the portfolio system. It can be confusing, frustrating, because if you don't know the technology or if you don't know what you're supposed to do. But the students also see that giving feedback and sharing their ideas with others is very helpful, and that is what a portfolio system can also do. It can facilitate shared learning. And so, for example, my portfolio, what they were talking about, which is a version of Mahara, there you have the possibility to see all the pages that others have shared with you in a portfolio in one area, and then you can also easily see where there are already comments. And you can always comment on a portfolio page. You don't see any names here because I just grayed them out for privacy reasons. But what you can always do is comment on a portfolio page, give the students comments. Teachers can also use it, give each other comments. And that way you can engage, and it's not just a one-way street, it's not just a portfolio for one person, but you bring in everybody else, and the teacher does not have to be the only person who gives feedback. And what is also important for shared learning is that there are discussion forums, that students or learners or anybody who is on a portfolio system can discuss certain things. This is an example of a discussion forum of language teachers on my portfolio who are exploring of how to use portfolios in their classroom. And of course, all language teachers kind of come up with a lot of the same questions. So why not utilize the technology to bring them together and to give them a platform where they can share their concerns, their questions, and then also give them the opportunity to share their templates with other teachers so that they can talk about these and kind of use them maybe also in their own classrooms and not have to recreate everything themselves. And as I've just mentioned, a portfolio system is not always just for students, but it can also be used by instructors, teachers themselves, and anybody also in the industry, for example, to publish an electronic resume to show off what you've been doing in an electronic environment, or to show which professional development or which PD sessions you've attended, your membership in organizations, and keep all that in one central space so that whenever anybody has a question about yourself or wants to find you, they can go to that electronic portfolio or just to that resume and read up on it. What I find is also very important in an electronic portfolio system is that you can personalize it. We shouldn't really use just the regular learning management system. If we look at any of them, they always have one theme that the university decides on, or any other institution. It has to be corporate branded. But that's not what an ePortfolio system should be. Of course, there could be some branding on the home page, on the entrance page, but the portfolio pages, students should have the possibility to make them their own, because in contrast to a learning management system, an ePortfolio system is, of course, always student-centered. And the student has the ownership. The student decides who shall have access to certain things of the portfolio. It's not the teacher or the instructor who can read up on it or who can control everything, but it's the student that is in the driving seat. And one of the ePortfolio systems that are around, one of the few very dedicated systems, is Mahara. And here in New Zealand, it is rather widely known in the school sector as My Portfolio, as we've just heard in the video from the students, myportfolio.school.nz. It's an installation of Mahara that is supported by the New Zealand Ministry of Education, and every school student and every school teacher can use it for free. So schools just need to register. They don't have to worry about installing it on their own server. They can just use it. And what I really like about this environment is that it also fosters the communication among teachers, because the software is not installed on a school server or hosted just for one school. All schools can communicate with each other. So teachers from one school can contact teachers from another school and form groups, form discussion groups, talk about different topics, also do online moderation if they wish to do so. And there are no boundaries for them. They are all in one big place, and the students can also get in touch with each other if they wish. In the tertiary sector, there's a equivalent, myportfolio.ac.nz, which tertiary institutions in New Zealand can use. I'm not so familiar with it, but as far as I know, there are not so many interactions going on between institutions who are on myportfolio.ac.nz. So that is a potential for that to still grow. And of course, because Mahara is an open source software, you can always also install it on your own server, either on your own university server, institution server, wherever you wish to do it. Because there are no license fees attached and you really only do the hosting there. And it's also developed further. Currently we are on version 1.4. Version 1.5 will come out sometime next year with new features, and the community has the input of what gets put into Mahara. So it's not only the developers deciding it, but it's really primarily driven by the community which features they want to have in the system, which I find is the most important thing, because we are not teaching. I do go to workshops, but then I teach on Mahara or on my portfolio, but I'm not a full-time teacher, I'm not a full-time lecturer at any university. So I don't know what is actually needed, and therefore the input from students, from lecturers is actually really, really important to make the tool actually do what you need it to do. In the case of myportfolio.school.nz, which unfortunately no one of you can use, the Ministry of Education actually offers taster sessions, such as a workshop we had yesterday, to familiarize users, especially teachers, in the use of Mahara, so that they actually know how to do certain things, how to get started. So that is one way of introducing teachers to the platform, to get a little head start to the students, and then immediately know how things could work. If you have any questions on myportfolio.school or .ac or Mahara in general, I'd be happy to talk to you. If not today, then definitely online. And if you have any questions already now, I think we might still have a minute or two to trying to answer them.